This is going to be a very different style of review than what I typically try and do because Triangle Strategy is definitely a very different style of game. It's unique, it's long, and honestly, it's got a lot of talking in it. So I wanted to break down the goods and the bads of the project as I've experienced it thus far. What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Now, this game is definitely extremely cool because I'm a fan of 90s RPGs. I really grew up with that old style pixel art, cool music, chiptune. Like, I appreciate what this game is trying to do, and in many aspects, it feels like that proper sequel that a lot of us wanted. You see, this is the second project by the studio that made Octopath Traveler. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is because, honestly, Octopath Traveler took me 100 hours to unlock the secret ending. It was a very, very fun but very arduous task. So, I have now only played 10 hours of Triangle Strategy as I record this video, but I wanted to talk about my impressions as they currently exist after getting a chance to experience the methodology, the politics, and the really good combat system. Now, the game itself is broken down into three separate chunks, what they call the story, the exploration mode, and additionally, the combat itself. So I want to try and follow their rules, so to speak, and talk about it in the separate chunks. But let's begin with the battles, because let's face it, that's the most flashy part. The combat itself in Triangle Strategy is very much based on the old school style of games like Final Fantasy Tactics. It is a grid-focused, turn-based battle style, which has you basically trying to outmaneuver your opponents and outsmart sometimes entire enemies, groups of enemies, bandits, rival armies, political systems. Like, sometimes the battles are very, very, very lopsided. They're tough. But that's also part of the fun of it. Essentially, the way this works is that each of your different characters is their own separate hero. They have their own speciality that really gives them abilities that help them fight off these different foes you face. Now, these could be things like a spy that's able to take 2 turns every single turn that they're up. There's people that are on horseback, which may have more movement range, but they're not as good at fighting off flying opponents. You can have people with bows and arrows, so they're able to snipe specific targets. Or somebody like my personal favorite is this princess who's a pyromancer, which means she can only cast fire spells, but she is easily able to turn people to freaking ash. Now, the fun part of this is that if you're able to screw up them, if you're able to push the opponent into making a mistake, you can utterly decimate them. One of the major mechanics of this is about combos. Essentially, each of your individual heroes is very strong, but when they work together, you are going to definitely win. Now, the way this works is that basically, if you end your turn close to an opponent, the next person who attacks is able to sandwich them together, basically. If you've got a guy in front and a guy in back, the other guy's not just going to stand there. Of course, they're going to stab them in the juicy spine. Now, this makes it where you're constantly trying to make sure that you're just pushing the enemy into stressful circumstances, while also making sure your team is properly supported. By using magic to boost your defense, boost your attack, and heal your wounds, you really do get a chance to basically push them outside their comfort zone and hopefully achieve victory. Now, the combat system is exceptionally good. I love it a lot, but here is the biggest detriment to Triangle Strategy. You don't get to fight as much as I would enjoy. This is a game that, in some aspects, feels like an interactive movie. Now, I've only played the first 10 hours, but in 10 hours, I've done about 6 battles. Now, please, I just ask that you try and understand what I'm saying here, which is that it's not that there's just a very limited amount of combat, it's that it's very spaced out between other styles of gameplay that feel a bit different. So, in this game, it is very heavily focused on story. This is a plot-heavy game. The voice acting is good, the writing is good, but there is like 10 million different characters. The conflict at the center of this game is something called the Salt Iron War. Essentially, there are these rival kingdoms that each have a different valuable resource, whether it be iron, salt, minerals, the ability to just transport stuff. There's a kingdom that has a very big river, so therefore they're able to basically be the big trade route people. So a large chunk of this game is watching all these interpersonal conflicts, watching the Duke of one kingdom negotiate with the princess of another, a king having a heart attack before he's able to properly finish a treaty. A lot of this game is heavy amounts of long cutscenes. Now, these are still something that you get to interact with a bit. Because you are a rising hero in this kingdom, you get a chance to do a lot of different dialogue options. Essentially what this does is it allows you to dictate the flow of the conversation. So you could be more of a strict leader, or a kind leader, or a supportive leader, to sort of build up a different style of trust with your people, with your comrades, and with your kingdom. Now, in general, I think the story is incredibly deep. It's actually very impressive how they've managed to make each of these different styles of people that you encounter, these different kingdoms, these different armies and stuff that you're going against. They have very different styles of society to them. There's, people that are very hyper-focused on religion, so everything they do is dictated by how they can make God happy. There's kingdoms that are hyper-isolationist, where they're so secret they practically believe that secrecy is the path to all joy. There's people that are focused on honor, so they'll die for their kingdom if they think it means their family name will be just a little bit more valuable. I think that all the different kingdoms I've encountered thus far have been incredibly fleshed out, but you cannot play this game casually. Let me just put this warning out there. This is one of those games that has like 50 characters. That's not a joke. There's like 50 major characters, and each of them has their own plots, motivations, voice acting, crazy plot twists. There is a lot going on. This is not one of those RPGs that you can just put on in the background while listening to a podcast. No, 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 no. This is the kind of game where you sit down, you take notes, you focus, because if you screw up any of the details, you're probably going to screw up the next dialogue option. Now, this last aspect of triangle strategy is very strange because it's almost optional. There is a set mode of gameplay called exploration, where essentially they sort of just set you loose in each of the towns. You get a chance to, of course, buy supplies, you can talk to people, you can do extra research, or you can find hidden items. This is also sort of your chance to actually get a lay of the land. 95% of the time when you do these exploration modes, you're probably going to have an important fight right after it. It's sort of your chance to scope out where you want your snipers to hide, where you want your people to try and flank the enemy or cast the biggest ballerist spells. Now, I think it's interesting because you can actually skip these. Whenever the exploration mode kicks on, pretty much immediately, you have the choice of just leaving it, which is strange because there is a lot of very vital lore. There's a chance to build up more trust with your kingdom. It's something that feels so vital, but you have a chance to essentially fast forward through it. I like that everything Triangle Strategy is trying to do so far, but I do wish it had a little bit less talking in general. Now, people are probably going to get mad about that, but my thought is just that the combat is so fun. I really enjoy the battles. I really enjoy leveling up and trying to figure out how to just get that perfect combo on a really strong foe. So sometimes having that 45 minutes of dialogue between the next crazy boss fight, it does slow down the pace to a considerable degree. Not so much that it ruins the game. I'm not going to pretend that this is a complete garbage fire, but with the graphics being so beautiful, with the spell effects being so freaking glorious to see in action, I wish I had more chances to kind of just beat people up. Now, I do remain hopeful because obviously I'm only 10 hours into the game itself. If you'll remember their previous project, Octopath Traveler, the combat did increase. After you got about 20 hours into the game, it did get a lot faster. So I'm hopeful that that's what this becomes. But I kind of want to just talk about the game as I'm currently impressed by it, because it is fun, it is nice, and certainly if you're a fan of games like Final Fantasy Tactics and the crazy political intrigue that it had, this is definitely the game for you. But what do you guys think? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a giant thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. I don't know why, but it took me like an hour to film this video. I kept sputtering over my words. Too many different combat. I can't even do the outro right. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.